a reminder that we should take our discussion to the front curb. Take it to the front curb. Welcome everybody. We actually finally have Dietrich on the video. Welcome Dietrich.
Thank you.
And
Yay.
Bonnie, thank you for making cookies. I feel Emily's presence with us and
But I was just reminded some people are allergic to peanuts in their peanut butter cookies.
yeah, don't eat them if you're allergic to peanuts.
I don't think they should even be sitting next to them, should they?
I don't know, you might want to distance yourself.
Anyway.
Let's see if I'm allergic.
So, let's do a quick round of introductions. Most of us know each other, but we have a couple new faces. So Ryan Bolton, I'm facilitating this CAG from the Consensus Building Institute.
Linda Keeper, EPA's project manager for the site.
I'm Chris Riddell, I'm the community involvement section chief. Steve Rickle with waste management.
Marty Sobey, CAG member, Murphy Creek.
Maggie Rash, CAG member, Murphy Creek.
Richard Rader, CAG member, Thunderbird Estates.
Tom Kraus, co-chair CAG, Thunderbird Estates.
Bobby Rader, chair, Thunderbird States.
Bill Fryer, technical advisor for the CAG.
Jeff Baker, peanut cookie canary. And they're great. They're really good.
We're keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, and I'm also, well, I have to, I'm gonna run against that. I'm Arapahoe County Commissioner.
JD Key with the Lowry Fund Trust.
Monrovia Wagner, Tri-County Health Department.
Karen Hancock, City of Aurora.
Loretta Daniel, Arapahoe County.
Keith Homer Shane, Tri-County Health Department.
Lee Pavanka, State Health Department.
Loretta, do you mind saying what your role and title is just for people who don't yet know?
Okay, I'm the new long-range planning program manager. I replaced Julio, and I've only been in this position for 2 weeks, so I'm really just learning.
We're glad to have you.
Tanya Keys, Arapahoe County Planning.
Janine Dowderman, State Health Department.
And anyone is welcome to come over up to the table. There's
I'm gonna just wait to see who else.
all right. Well, however you're.
Extra agenda if anybody wants one.
Thank you. Extra agenda up here.
And Dietrich.
Excuse me?
And Dietrich.
Dietrich, please go ahead. Can you introduce yourself? Sorry.
Yes, I'm Dietrich McGinnis with McGinnis and Associates, technical advisor for the TAG group.
Okay, great. And you have an agenda for the meeting with you, Dietrich?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. Okay,
Then we
so
have someone else. Andrea
Aiken.
Andrea Aiken. Do we have the technology to hear other people who are on the line right now too?
We do. Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sometimes people are just on mute and listening, so,
That's right.
okay.
Or they have the wrong software version, so.
Okay, well, if you're listening and you want to opine, you can try to send a chat, maybe, yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to hear you. But normally we have the function so that people can listen in. We have never had it to be interactive because these meetings, as we decided at the very beginning, with the exception of TAG advisors or out of town people who are sort of guests, that we want to encourage in-person participation so people can listen in, but it's not really suited for much participation online. Okay, well, just a quick orientation to tonight's meeting. So there's a number of agenda items. Some of these are updates, some of them are longer conversations, and we've organized this into sort of updates and then work session topics, but often the updates end up being quite a bit of discussion themselves, and we usually let that happen. So I think we'll just go through the updates, and then in terms of the work session, we want to allow time for, at the last meeting, EPA had talked about it, there was a tour given to a congressional delegation, and the CAG has followed up with that in ways that we discussed at the last meeting, so you all wanted to talk about that. There were some discussion that folks want to have about well testing and sampling data and sort of the plume in general. The way that the work session also has been functioning is that, in addition, some of these are questions that people have, but a lot of it is just discussion amongst the group. And we have Dietrich here and Bill. So discussion amongst the group in an open sort of forum for folks to articulate what some concerns are and try to understand better what those are, not necessarily in sort of format. So that's the idea. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll definitely want to talk about upcoming meetings, scheduling, and topics and things like that. I think the first thing we want to do is hear an update about community involvement for EPA. And Chris, I think this is your first meeting for the Lowry CAG, and so maybe you can talk a little bit about your role
Sure.
and an update of that. And Janine, I think you wanted to give an update on the community involvement.
So yeah, again, my name is Chris Waddell. I manage all the community involvement, all three community involvement coordinators within EPA Region 8. We've lost quite a few over the, I think, last few months, including myself. I was community involvement coordinator, now I'm managing that group. And obviously Jennifer Harrison was the community involvement coordinator at this site, but she had moved, we had to kind of rejig where our priorities were. So she's now most of her times being on the Colorado Smelter Fund site in Pueblo. So in the interim, I'm kind of filling in, I'll be a community involvement coordinator light, kind of like a point of contact for that. In the interim though, we have posted job announcements for new community involvement coordinator hires. Those job announcements close this week. And it takes about maybe 2 to 3 weeks till we get a cert list of people who kind of applied and then are eligible to be certified, that we can go through, look at the resume and decide who to interview and hire for those positions. So hopefully I'm going to guess between all the federal bureaucracy that it takes to hire someone on full time as a new CIC, probably about 2 months, could go to 3. I hope that's not the case, but we'll see. Their first site priority will be this site, given the amount of community interest. They'll have other sites in their kind of portfolio. And I'll also be here to guide them along, especially if they're new to Superfund, new to community involvement. I'll kind of be by their side as they're learning the kind of ropes of the Superfund program, community involvement, and how this site fits into the overall Superfund program as well. So I will plan to attend when I'm in town, these CAG meetings going forward as well. So hopefully it'll become somewhat of a familiar face.
Question. Andrew Mutter, who was here last month, he was just here for like a visit, or will we be?
Yeah,
seeing
so
him again?
that's a really good question. So Andrew Mutter is actually my supervisor. He's the public affairs director for the region. And I think he just wanted to come and take a gauge of this site, this community advisory group. He managed not only the kind of community involvement, but all public affairs throughout the region as well. So while he does have some Superfund and CAG experience, his kind of background realm is more in kind of media, traditional media. So I don't know that you'll be seeing him again, but you know, if you ever have questions, you can always email him, email me. But I would ask, if you do email him, make sure you email me and then kind of the site team, both either from or the state as well, so we're all getting the same.
Chris, a quick clarification. So Andrew Mutter at the last meeting said that if folks wanted to contact EPA, they should email Jennifer as the point of contact, but that copy you and Linda and him.
I would say
that-
take Jennifer
That's
off,
what
so
I was
there's just
wondering.
no kind of confusion of what her role is. She already has a full plate with Colorado Smelter and some other sites that she's working on. So to kind of have that kind of clean break, just email
Okay,
me
I was
and
just-
everything else like
So
that.
we
Thank
should
you
not,
for
people
that.
should not include her on.
Right, I mean, if you do by accident, that's fine.
No, I
And I
just,
can always go to her if I have questions.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Janine, did you want to give a quick update?
So as you know, with the community involvement plan, let me stand. Jennifer and I did conduct the interviews. They were completed. The draft just arrived in my email box today. So I guess I get a shot at it now, and then we go to public comment with it. So it's in the offing. Thank goodness, finally. Yeah. I was going to have to say, well, I think the contractor is developing the draft, but I guess we have a draft and EPA has reviewed it. Jennifer's looked at it, and now I get a crack at it. So it's coming soon.
So Janine, when you say Jennifer's reviewed it and now you're going to look at it and it's in draft form, what is it that you'll do with it? Do you comprise it into a readable?
It'll probably become a final draft.
Okay.
Meaning it's not final, it's a draft, but it's already gone through agency review. So next, the community will be able to take a look at it and provide more comments if you have some.
Okay. I didn't think it could be changed once you've done the interviews.
Sure, it's a community involvement plan, community involvement plan, so it's an iterative and live dynamic process. So yeah, we did our interviews. You didn't see all the interviews, so you wouldn't want to do all that, believe me. But and then we have to interpret what we heard and put it in a report. So you get a crack at looking at what we interpreted and what kind of path forward we think that the program should take. And then you get to look at it and see, well,
So if
okay,
there's a misinterpretation, then we can.
you can make a comment on anything you want.
Good, that's good to know.
Just to kind of, I think Janine alluded to this, community involvement plans in themselves too, we usually keep them as living documents and can be
They are.
updated at any time. New information, new community member wants to say something or new comes to light, so just because we have it doesn't mean, you won't be able to comment on it, you can comment on your comments and they can change going forward, so it's
Absolutely.
very, very flexible.
So what impact will this have on Lowry?
Impact in terms
On
of,
Lowry, yeah, what part of
Yeah.
Lowry?
Well, we've got all these comments now. So how will those comments impact decision-making at Lowry?
Actually, think of it in terms of how the agencies see the best way forward with community involvement, not the decision-making. There are a lot of documents about the decision-making. That's not this. What I would suggest you do, there was a community involvement plan done finalized in 2012. Compare those two documents and see if there's any difference.
And Janine, I'm wondering if you should plan some time for people to, after the CAG's had a chance to review it, if there's any comments or questions in terms of how does this impact community involvement for Lowry, if we should make time for that. Do you think that would be timely for the next meeting in October or not yet?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just got it today, so I
Okay.
have a hot update for you even as of
All right.
today. So
Well,
I have
so-
to see how it goes.
Okay, so it sounds like when it's ready, we'll do that. We'll make time to have a discussion about it. Okay.
If that's what the CAG wants.
It's not, I'm seeing a couple nodding heads, but anyone else interested in having time for conversation about it once it's out? And you all have time for review?
Maybe they need to-
I'll check in with folks.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Because it may be, oh, well, okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and I think it would be if we more clearly understood how the community involvement will be used as a guide for community involvement at Lowry.
And you'll go ahead and review it and let
I
us know
think
what you
that's
think.
where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, Linda, you were going to give an update of a number of reports and plans in progress.
So, I've used this diagram before in the past. I mean, would it be helpful for you to put off of this? When I pass
Do you
it
have
on?
enough to hand out?
Yeah, and then you can decide if it's helpful.
Here,
On the other side of it.
Linda, we talked briefly about this, and you were saying that if this is a helpful rubric for sharing at the beginning of each meeting, that you could do that, if that was useful. So let's have a quick update, and then we'll hear about if this would be a helpful thing to do as part of each meeting. People can- Did you get a copy of it?
It's in the Jason Crow tour.
Oh.
It's one of the pages there, and we've used it in the past.
I wonder if I could move in front of the camera real quick.
I might be able to pull it up here.
Okay, so Dietrich, this is a bunch of hexagons of different aspects, different reports and plans that are in progress. And Janine's gonna try to pull it up so you can see it on the screen. It was part of the Jason Crow tour packet, but she's gonna try to pull it up for you.
Janine, could you email that to me?
Let's see, I think I can. I think
You have it? I could, if you know it, you can get mine.
I'll try to do that now, Dietrich.
Okay. And I just had a quick question while you guys are doing that regarding the community involvement plan. What was the expected date for that to come out?
It sounds like it's on the state's desk as of an hour ago, and it's gone through EPA review, and so likely, be available fairly soon for the CAD review, but Jeannie wasn't sure when.
Okay, I apologize. I missed just a little bit of the conversation there.
No problem.
Okay, so in this diagram, I wanted to show the projects that were resulted from the 5-year review and that are currently in some phase of action. So the items in green are things that are in progress or draft right now or under review. The items in blue are in the planning stage. And then lastly is update the groundwater monitoring plans. And so nothing's really started on that, other than the things that were updated in the groundwater monitoring plan, the last revision. So I'll start with the synoptic sampling, and that's complete. The cessation data has been collected. Progress report number 6, which you guys had requested a data summary from that after some discussions with different people. We soon realized what you were looking for was just the access databases from those. So that was sent to the tag advisors and to CDPHE. So this week, so they should have that. Same thing with the north end 1,4-dioxane plume characterization. The raw data from that was also sent at the same time. That report was submitted to EPA for review in early September. We submitted some comments to them. They incorporated them, came back to EPA. I'm reviewing them again. And then after that, it'll go to CDPHE and then to the tag advisors. Any questions about that one?
Linda, just because I'm trying to track
I
this
got it.
in terms of notes.
So you do your meeting, I'm sending him the.
Oh, I already did.
Oh,
Yep, sorry, I sent it to him. Sorry, I said I was emailing it to him. Sorry. Linda, the North End investigation report, that's the one that you're currently reviewing, and then we'll go to the state and then to the tag advisors.
But the raw data was sent this week.
And did you say the cessation pilot as well, or you haven't done that?
So the raw data was sent, the access database, and Dietrich, I'm assuming you got that?
Oh, the database? They're trying to send it. There was an issue with it. And I've been going back and forth with them to try to get access to the database, to the online database that they sent.
It's never simple. We'd like it to be simple, but technology isn't.
Yeah, so they have sent me information on it. I do not yet have access to it.
Okay. Well, let us know if it goes too long and you can find another way to get it. And then I said the cessation summary report is anticipated to come to EPA for our initial review September 27th.
Okay, thanks.
So then we have the groundwater numerical model, and that was a committee had worked on developing that. It was to the point where they call it the calibration point. So EPA reviewed it, CDPHE provided comments on it. Sarah took that through it's called the comment consolidation process, where she looks at CDPHE's comments, consolidates those with EPA's, prepares them for the WSDs to review, and then the state gets back a write-up as to their comments and how they were handled and considered. So it's in the consolidation phase right now. After that happens, so I guess my question for you, Dietrich, is that something that you feel that you'd want to comment on, the numerical model calibration report?
We would certainly like to review it. But until I say it, whether or not we make comments will be dependent on that. But we would like to see it.
Okay. I would say, let's see. So the comments will go back to WSD. So I think it's probably at the point where you can see it. So I'll talk to Sarah and find a way to get that over to you.
Sounds good.
And then 3DVA, Tetra Tech was working with CDM on the initial ground truthing and going through historical data, trying to get the basic information to develop the conceptual site map, I'm on the wrong one, sorry, the 3DVA. Okay, so that's like 90% done. Tetra Tech and PWT, because of our contract, is at stoppage right now, so that work is just at a stop until I can get them back on board. I'm hoping to in the next month, and then we'll start finishing the 3DVA. But what we had at the presentation with Sarah and Diane a couple meetings ago, that's kind of the point where it stopped at. So those are all the ones in progress. Any questions about those? Okay. The capture zone analysis. So the containment system evaluation, there's 2 different names for that. So the work selling defendants wrote a containment system evaluation. It came to EPA for review, went to the state for review. They had it for 6 weeks. And then they decided to institute a dispute on it because well, I don't want to say what the state's opinion is on it. Do you want to talk about that, Lee, the dispute?
No, thanks.
Okay, because I can't talk for you. But anyway, it's in the dispute process. So my management and the state's management are working together through that process. We've had a couple meetings and we'll keep having meetings to resolve that. So that one's at, EPA does have some comments for the WCs, so we'll be sending them over to them. So we'll continue through that process so we don't lose a bunch of time on it.
Can I ask a question about the dispute? And I guess I can appreciate, not really, but sort of, that you don't want to talk about it, but I don't understand, the process. Are you trying to resolve something? I don't get
I'm
it.
gonna defer to my experts.
It's a great question. I'm glad that somebody asked that, yeah.
Yeah,
The
well,
big picture.
there's not just one single, specific issue that forms the basis for the dispute. It's several things that are interrelated. And let me clarify the, I guess, authority or the process that we have with the state. And this is true not just for this site, it's for any Superfund site. When EPA implements a program, we're in partnership with the state. In some cases, the state takes the lead on a site. So we have an ongoing working relationship. That said, if you go back to the National Contingency Plan and look in there, it talks about developing agreements with the states to foster and facilitate implementation of Superfund. So they use this phrase, Superfund Memorandum of Agreement, in there, and it's basically just that. It's an agreement between EPA and the state on how they're going to implement Superfund in that state. We can't delegate, the authority for Superfund to the state, but nonetheless, they're our partners as we, in that, and we have one of these Superfund Memorandum Agreement documents between EPA and the state of Colorado. In that document, it says, well, what do you do when you disagree? And you have a basic disagreement at the program manager level, and they can't resolve that. What do you do at that point? So there is a dispute resolution process in this memorandum of agreement. The state invoked that dispute clause about this set of issues on this site. So it's nothing to do with the consent decree with the WSDs. This is a program implementation process that we're working through.
Okay. Is that, Lee, is that the state's take on that?
It
as
is,
well?
yeah. Moves up the ladder, so.
So right now, in these meetings, we have all the folks that have been, the staff folks that have been working on this, on both sides. Sarah's there, Lee's there, Wendy Notvold's been participating. And then the first level managers, which is me on EPA side and Doug James. We'll work on this. Hopefully we can make progress. You know, if we, you know, decide, you know, we somehow, you know, we haven't been able to resolve this, it goes to the next level of management. And depending on how that shakes out, then it works its way up the chain.
All right, thank you.
Will it ever be transparent to us what happens in
Yeah,
this
that's a good
process?
question. That's a good question.
You know, I think at the end or toward the end, and hopefully this won't take, you know, too awful long. We're, you know, both making I think a good faith effort to try to distill down what the issues are, how they interrelate, and just where we disagree. And if the disagreements are technical in nature, if they're a process disagreement or misunderstanding, and what we can do to resolve those things. So I think it's a good thing in the long run. You know, it sounds ominous, dispute resolution. You know, we're getting along, we're talking, and hopefully the end result will be, you know, better for everybody concerned. You know, so that we're on the same page. And you know, scientists, experts, you know, everybody likes their own opinion, but we do at some point need to reach a consensus, you know, and move forward based on that. And if we discover new information that proves us wrong, then okay, you know, we'll adjust, we'll take a new course at that.
Steve, thanks for that explanation. And the only question that comes to my mind at this point is when you're going through this dispute resolution, I know that as the administration changes in their thought process of what's important and they hand it down to people like yourself and Linda. And I'm just wondering how much, and I hope I can say it this way, that's right. How much impact does the current EPA policy of trying to save industry money and not being too hard on them where it costs them money, how much of an impact will that have in this dispute resolution if it's talking about levels of cleanup or technology?
Sure. Well, I can answer that based on what I know and you know, my experience over the years. At this point, you know, for Doug, myself, Aaron Urdialis, Tracy White, you know, going on up through the chain, there's zero influence at that point. You know, if, and I think this is highly unlikely, you know, if it got up to the regional administrator, that's a political point, you know, and I think there's a possibility, you know, at that point, because they're much closer to, you know, the administration, if you will. But at this point, we're all career employees trying to do our job, you know, do the best job we can. So I'd say zero at this point.
Thank you.
I appreciate the explanation too for both of you. Thanks. I know that people here have asked before, well, what happens if the agencies can't actually agree? And so this is sort of a useful example of it. Yeah.
This MOU was entered into agreement by both parties in 2005, so it's been a long-standing policy. It's not something new. Right. Though it doesn't, I don't think we have very many disputes on it. I mean,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tom, yeah.
Once you have an agreement, is it possible for you to let us know the, I guess the results and explain why you felt the results were a good outcome?
Sure.
Real outcome.
Yeah, I do think we have an obligation to document our decision making. I think that's really what you'd like to see is like, okay, you had your discussion, you went back and forth, you considered all the different pieces of information. You made a decision, and you reached a consensus. What was that based on? You know, and I think you should be able to, hopefully you should be able to track through, you know, we started here and we got to here.
Yeah.
This may be sort of starting at the beginning, but I don't know what the scope of the capture zone analysis is and how it fits into the site remedy. I'm not aware of a working document that has explained what's going on and how it fits into any of this. Could you give me an explanation?
So I think, and I think the question is also,
I think at the end of this, when the dispute is resolved, whatever way, that there would be some type of explanation.
What I'm asking is, what are you doing? What is the capture zone analysis applied to? There is no pump and treat in the site remedy.
I think Lee raised his hand to respond.
Yeah, the short answer is there's a document that was submitted to us for our review that outlines the process. And in this case, the process, these are the semantics that we're discussing. Containment system evaluation, CSE, versus the guidance from 11 years ago that is the systematic, sort of objective, proven, vetted approach. So we often refer to that as capture zone analysis. So it's basically a fork in the road. And the proposed approach on the table was the CSE, which is a brand new, to us, it's brand new. To the state, it's brand new. And so that's what this is about. Are we going to follow the guidance or are we going to come up with something new? So, and we're amenable to coming up with something new, but it has to be at least as stringent as the guidance from 2008 is our position. So, so that's what it is. We received a plan, and instead of commenting on it, we invoked dispute, formal dispute. So it exists. There's a document.
It applies to analysis of containment.
I'm sorry, hydraulic containment.
I'm just thinking of the specifics.
Right, hydraulic
You have the
containment.
north boundary barrier wall, you've got the.
Each of the OU
lines around
each
it.
one of the components ultimately will be evaluated using whatever approach we agree upon. And the first one that's been chosen is the toughest one, in my opinion, which is the north boundary barrier wall. But we will go from each component once we decide this. So that's why this process is really fundamental, because it's going to control what we do to evaluate each of these remedy components. So.
And there was that line of capture wells.
In my opinion, regardless of whether these are individual vertical extraction wells or linear sinks, or like the interceptor system, the north boundary barrier wall, or slurry walls, every component that is supposedly containing or controlling the contamination, that needs to be evaluated using one of these two forks. So, but it is so important. We didn't want to let this, we didn't want to go down the road and pick the wrong approach. So,
Thank you for that explanation. It sits a lot better.
yeah, but there is a document that was submitted. That was the original point, and that process that's outlined in that would be applied to every remedy component related to the groundwater containment. So.
Great. Thanks. I think it was helpful to explain that we're talking about a methodology that's in question. Okay. Any other updates, Linda, in terms of, I have status data summaries, but I think, did you speak to that?
Yes.
Yeah. And the only thing I did not get is, in terms of the cessation pilot summary, I know that you said that you submitted the access database. Is there a date by which that's expected to from EPA, if you already have it, what's the status of the report?
Well, there's two things. So the access to the base.
Right.
The WSTs are, and Dietrich are trying to
Right.
get that
Right,
to each other.
right.
And then the actual cessation summary report.
Uh-huh.
The WSTs have targeted September 27th
Oh, same day.
as providing that to EPA.
Okay, same date as the north end.
No, I already have the north end.
Okay. So the next bullet here says engagement of the TAG advisors in technical discussions. And I will say that my understanding is that after the last meeting, Linda had said she was going to do this, and she did in fact ask Sarah to connect with Dietrich, and they did regarding ways in which the TAG advisors, well, regarding a number of things, Dietrich, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like after talking with Linda, my understanding is that the expectation is that now Dietrich and Bill and Sarah are in direct communication as needed, whenever, and that in addition, the idea is to get, after there are draft reports out, the TAG advisors will be brought in to sit down with the state and EPA to talk about comments. The thing that I think was brought up last meeting was, can we have data in the meantime before draft reports are out? And I think that's what we were just talking about in terms of the access database. So I guess with that said, this question, Dietrich and Bill, do you want to say anything about this piece about having technical discussions in October or November? Is there anything specific that you want to talk about here, or Bonnie and Tom, with respect to timeline for engagement at a certain level? Or do we just cover it?
I think I'd like to hear what Dietrich has to say, because he and Sarah had a long discussion. It was my impression it went fairly well. But I think what the CAG, Citizen CAG, are looking for is a little more involvement in discussing real technical issues. And to just comment on them is still, our goal is to get them actually involved in before the decision's made. So I don't know where that went. I don't know what that's at, what your thoughts are on that, Dietrich. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think there's three things that kind of come to mind immediately. I think the first one is we already are looking at pretty full agenda for any of these technical discussions, looking at these documents coming out in the data volume. And so the second one being that we have a couple of good dates to come up is, October, November, whenever this can be set up. And I think finally this discussion regarding the capture zone analysis is exactly one of the things that we're keyed into. It sounds like a discussion regarding the methodology for the evaluation, a very important evaluation at the site. But we're not participating in that. And I think that's remiss. I think that there's an opportunity to bring, it sounds to me like we're going to get a document delivered to us that the state and EPA both have already finalized. And the question is what are we doing here then? Where's the voice of the TAG going to be involved in this? So I think that the discussion with Sarah was really good. I think we both kind of agree there's a lot of things to talk about here. There's a lot of discussion to be had. And we really just need to set a date and settle the agenda and get it rolling. So, and it's my understanding that that's in Linda's court right now. Or am I mistaken?
What specifically is in my court?
To set it up.
Setting a date and settling an agenda for a technical meeting.
So I'll break it up into two. So for items in the dispute, until the dispute is over, EPA and CDBG will be having conversations about that. So once that is over, then that will open up opportunities to talk with the TAG advisors. And then what Sarah had told me is that we're interested in coming out to Denver, either in October or November, and having a meeting with EPA and CDPG, and then, maybe coming to the CAG meeting afterwards. So that would be fine. And if the line of communication is open, so you can call Sarah anytime, talk to her, and just have to just schedule it. But I think having these reports in your hands is going to be helpful to having those conversations.
But actually, I would say having the data in hand is what's required for the conversation. I think we can all kind of discuss what that data means. I don't think we need to have the work settling defendant's final version of the report in hand, or even one to comment in, to make progress.
Propose some dates, and we'll see if we can make one of those work. And that's how we set up all our other meetings is, so whoever wants to meet with us, they give us some dates that they're available, then I say the technical teams in town are available, and we can set that up.
Well, I certainly could send over some dates and suggested agenda then.
Okay.
It sounds to me like the real question here is it possible to, and this came up last time, is it possible to know how to involve, to have the tag advisors involved before the reports are issued, when, and have the opportunity to review data and comment on it, not, as being in the mix, as offering, and you all talked about this last meeting, as offering a different perspective, offering input before reports are drawn up. So I think that's what I'm hearing from you all, and I think it sounds like between you and Sarah, there's some openness to that. You all are sending over the access databases.
Yeah,
And
Sarah said that after their, when she talked about the conversation with Dietrich, she said you made some good suggestions. And so that she's open to hearing what you have to say, and she thought some of them were really good suggestions. So just even having that phone conversation, I think was beneficial. You can call her anytime you want.
So it seems like the model at this point, the proposed model I'm hearing from EPA is, in order for the tag advisors to be involved in helping interpret data, come up with ideas, come up with solutions before it's put together in the context of a report, is to do that in a somewhat ad hoc way with Sarah, telephonically and by email, one-on-one, but also to schedule periodic times. Tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but to schedule periodic times, whether the reports are out or not, to come and talk both about the data and draft reports, and just have a full agenda with EPA and the state.
It was my understanding that EPA, CDPHE, work settling defendants, we're meeting on a regular basis in order to discuss technical issues. And we were asking that when we're meeting to discuss technical issues, that our technical advisors be involved in that. And this is the reason we asked for them to be in the meetings. So,
right.
it's because we are at this point, go ahead.
Those are agency meetings, and so this other approach separately is the option. So
Linda, I think you might be talking about something else. So there's
I don't think so.
Well, there's the agency meeting, right, that you call agency meetings with the work settling defendants, the two agencies, and all the consultants. We're at a table, and those are happening, every month or several months.
No, so just so you know, like the last one we had was like June.
Right, every month or several months.
Yeah, so we're not having these big meetings with everybody regularly. But it's when the data is ready right now. October stuff isn't really even gonna be ready for that, but we felt we needed to have the meeting, otherwise we would have pushed it to November.
The thing I just wanted to see, to clarify, because I wasn't sure if you were talking about which you're talking about, but there also are, correct me if I'm wrong, just periodic, just a CDPHE and EPA staff coming together, right? More regularly. So I'm wondering if that may be the place for the tag advisors to be plugging in as relevant.
I think until the dispute's over, and that's the main topic of our conversation, and we have to get that resolved. So, that's our priority right now, is to resolve this dispute.
Yeah, I mean, we have, I don't know what you want to call it, tiered administrative, approaches on these meetings. And EPA and CDPHE will meet as two governmental agencies and talk about governmental things. And there are no outside parties, at this meeting. And this dialogue we're having in the context of the dispute is such a meeting of that type of, then there's the next level or layer would be, where we're meeting with boards and independents in the two agencies, and our consultants typically, and that's that level, and then goes on beyond that. I just wanted to go back just a little bit to the participation. Dietrich, I think this was part of your comment. And the best point and the optimum point, I guess, for engagement, having you guys be able to see certain things. Until EPA and CDPHE are able to resolve things in the context of a dispute, that there won't really be anything cogent for you all to latch onto. At that point, I don't want you to get the impression that it's all over and done with. I mean, that's really almost more the beginning of the conversation with Dietrich, with you all. So it's not signed, sealed, and delivered at that point. It's just that the two agencies have worked through the things that we differ on, and hopefully we come up with a joint approach, a consensus approach to things. I don't know if that helps.
So it sounds like that right now, because of that dispute, that everything's basically on hold for reports from the WSDs. Okay, how about, I'm sorry.
That's my confusion too. The only thing that's under dispute right now is the containment system evaluation approach. And so I got a couple things I got to get out here because I'm equally frustrated with this conversation. When it comes to the engagement of TAG advisors in technical discussions in October, November, my impression from the past 3 months is the main focus there, or the main interest. It's not exclusively this, but it's the potable water cessation report and it's the North End investigation. And so my frustration is, it actually says here October, November. I don't think that the advisors can plan on anything until EPA can come up with a firm date when they're going to come up with the final version. And so what we're hearing is internal dates, EPA and all that stuff, but we don't know if that means a month from now or 2 months from now. So I wouldn't make any airline reservations until EPA has something. And I'm not trying to put them on the spot to throw a date out today, but they just can't do it. And so, a month from now, maybe that crystal ball will look a lot clearer, but the end of September and trying to plan an October meeting, I don't think we can get through the rest of the process. And my second point of frustration here is that about 2 months ago, the state received the calibrated numerical modeling report for the north boundary barrier wall. And yes, it covers other areas, but the focus is on the north boundary barrier wall. And as EPA said, the state submitted comments and EPA is looking at those comments. But what I thought I heard tonight is EPA said, yeah, we'll give the CAG the modeling report. And so I guess that's the modeling report, the one we received 2 months ago, or are we talking about revising it before we give it to the CAG, or?
So they're very close in the end of the consolidation.
Right.
Comments. So those will go back out to everyone. So
Those will go out to everyone.
to you.
Okay.
Right? And WSDs.
Okay.
And from there, it shouldn't be that much longer that it would be available for the TAG advisors to review if they
What I thought I heard you say was you're happy to give Dietrich the modeling report. So you're saying after we go through this
I
process,
think it would be in this exact moment, but yes,
Okay.
in the near future.
okay, near future.
So I'm editing my notes from that just to be a little more clear. So it sounds like in terms of the modeling report, that it's going first back after Sarah finishes the consolidation component, it's going back to the state and works on independent.
No, it's going back to the work on defendants,
And you, the consolidated comments.
but not the revised document.
I guess I'd have to check exactly with Sarah, like what it would look like. So
Okay.
it's hard for her.
Okay,
I thought you were saying you were going to give that, the same report we got from 2 months ago to the public, and that didn't make any sense. So that's not what we're talking about. You're talking about somewhere down the road, I would guess a month down the road. So, but I can only guess.
okay. That sounds good. It would go to the tag at the same time it goes to be available for the tag. Tom, yes.
Seems like when numbers come out, for instance, was it the sixth report for synoptic sampling at the north boundary wall? When that comes out, that should be the time when everybody sits down and looks at the numbers and said, how can we try to figure out what's going on with those numbers and what do they mean? And where we should go from there. That's the kind of discussion that I'm hoping that everybody can get into, including our advisors. And we've not been able to get those numbers, and I'm wondering what's the holdup? I understand solution, but you've got some basic numbers out there that it's time to sit down and try to figure out what they mean.
It takes time for the reviews.
I'm not asking for the review. What I'm saying is you had a session when you made the numbers. And they came out. And I guess you're not having them.
I guess I'm not completely sure.
I think, Tom, I think if this is right, but I think you're getting at theoretically, EPA and CDPG have been more or less regularly getting together to discuss what's going on. And that you're surmising that would have included the numbers that have gone into the cessation and North investigation reports, the data, and that's where you would like to be at the table. Like and so now that you have access to the access databases, that's where the data is, am I right? Yeah.
Yes, but the cessation data, yes.
The cessation and the northern data. So, whereas Lee, you were talking about, well, when the reports are out, that would be an obvious time to have the tag advisors here. But in addition, what Tom's saying is this piece about what about sitting down with the data and trying to figure out what it means.
So the EPA and the state have not had conversations.
Am I mistaken? They used to have conversations every month or every 2 weeks?
Yeah, but we have a lot to talk. That isn't something we've talked about. We have other things that we're talking about, like the data that's right now, the topic, the last meeting, and then the last 2 meetings with this year.
The state received data on Tuesday,
Right.
and you guys are still having a trouble getting it, but we just started looking at it on Tuesday, so we have not had a discussion yet, but that's part of our problem. We would like to have the conversations much earlier too. We would like to have the data much earlier as well, so that's not the way it's working out, so.
And I've said this before, any one of these projects is a huge undertaking for people. So, I mean, with between the WSDs and then our contractors in the state, there's probably 25 different people that do something that it's a lot of work and a lot of review, and when you're dealing with data, it has to go through quality control. There's just a whole different. So anyway, that's why it just takes.
Well, and I guess I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, only because it sounds like, the state only got the cessation and the northern data recently this week. You all are saying, and the tag advisors just got access to that data this week. And I'm just,
Actually, you guys are coming.
Oh, yeah, you don't have that, you have theoretical access.
Any minute now.
Not real access.
It's probably a technical issue that hopefully will be corrected soon. Yeah.
Hopefully it will be resolved. So I am just wondering if there actually may be an opportunity, kind of opportunity that you're talking about to, I mean, Dietrich got on the phone with Sarah and it sounds like they got into some of the technical stuff, right? So theoretically, that might be an avenue. I just wonder if there's others, but that seems like a real avenue.
You know, it just seems like, it just seems like everything we do now is a hindrance. There's all these things going on, we can't move on. And this 5-year review is supposed to be we're supposed to have things done within 5 years review, or we're gonna be doing a 5-year review on a 5-year review. And this just isn't making sense to us. And if there is data out there, even if there's a discussion between the state and EPA about, well, are we gonna follow the EPA guidance? Are we gonna do this? Which this TAC has been asking for a long time, let's follow the guidance. And there's been a real pushback on that. So here we sit, going through all these, and we know there's some data out there, but we can't see it because there's not an agreement. And I don't think we're asking to be involved so that you can agree to everything we say. What we're asking is, let us have a part in this now. Do the work that you have to do, but let us have our concerns expressed now rather than waiting until later, and then we're gonna have a big fight over that. It's just, let us come along with you. And if you don't agree with what our comments are, and if our suggestions don't look good to you, it's always been your option to say no. But we would at least like to have those issues on the table with you while you're doing all of this negotiating. And it's just frustrating that we can't be a part of it all the way along. And the biggest reason it's frustrating to me is because we used to have that access and that participation. And now it's just roadblocks. And I'm very worried that when all of you, the state and EPA, need to come to agreement and WSDs are brought in and they agree, you're going to open up to the public and the public's going to say, we aren't happy with that at all. And it could have been worked out way back here. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking for you to say, oh yeah, you guys are great and everything you're putting in is gospel. We're not asking for that. We're asking for the consideration of what our concerns are, so later on we don't have to look at what can we do now. We can work on these things on the way.
So I would say, Dietrich, feel free to call Sarah whenever you like and have discussions with her on what she has available. And then when these reports are ready for review, then they'll be ready for review. That's the best we can do at this point.
I think what my client is trying to say is it's their desire to be involved in the decision-making process. To be able to comment at a point in time where not just the final report's out, but where methodology is being decided, where decisions are being made on how really on some of these management issues. I think it's also a lot more efficient to look at the data and make decisions on how to handle it than it is to get everything done and then hand it to us and having to either replicate the method, begin to propose alternative methods that far down the line, puts the group at quite a disadvantage. And that's kind of what I hear. There is a role for the informal, a phone call, quick question to Sarah, and I do appreciate that. There's also one, and I need to ask, I mean, does this mean that I could send a message to the state as well and ask for a quick conference call on something? I mean, is that an open option as well? But I think eventually, I think we have to give the work-selling defendants a right to sit in the room and discuss their decisions with us, and have the efficiency of that back and forth. I'm not going to sit here and defend why a technical meeting is occasionally needed on a site like this. I think we all know it is. And I don't want to waste people's time with it. I think the trick is to do an effective agenda and make a decision. I'm looking at your plan, and you have 5 deliverable documents, 5 major documents coming from 3 sampling programs. The one in dispute is one of the 5 documents. I think there's a lot of work that's going to go around that, and I'm not sure that the dispute process is going to. I think that there's more to it than that. That's what I'm saying. Let's put together an agenda and best express what we think would be good topics, and go from there. And in addition, maybe talk a little bit about, do we want to set up some conference calls in the interim as we go through the data that I'm looking forward to looking at tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.
So I guess we're kind of done with that part.
Well, I wanted to, before we move on, let's just.
Okay, because I want to move on to
Okay.
the big issue that I see.
Well,
Let's finish this
Oh,
one.
yeah, let's finish it.
So,
Well, let me,
yeah, go ahead.
let me respond, and I thought I had tried to address it as part of the concern with my comments just a few minutes ago, but there will always be instances where the 2 regulatory agencies meet and there are no outside parties involved. And I'm not going to promise you that that can be different, because I don't believe that's true. That said, I do understand your interest in engaging and being part of the conversation before, in this case, we sit down with the parties potentially implementing the work, and hammering out exact details on how that's going to be done without your input. And I totally agree with you that that's a corruption of this process. You know, that's not why you're all here. You need to be engaged. Does that mean we will never have a discussion with the work settling defendants independent of you? Well, sure, we're gonna have a number of those probably. But what I was saying before, and maybe this is where, and Dietrich, your point's well taken, that dispute's not everything that's on the table. It's part of it, and it's an important part. But, and I do think we can have a dialogue about, well, what can we put out there to talk about right now? But what I said earlier was, even with regard to this important issue that we're talking about in the dispute, working through that, even at the end of that dialogue between EPA and the state, it's not, chiseled in stone at that point. You know, there's still discussion to be had, input to be heard about that. So maybe I didn't express that, strongly enough or in the right way. But so even with regard to that, I think that is true. Certainly, we're taking steps to get you the information to start looking at, start parsing out the data. But I do, I think the best thing we can do is have an ongoing dialogue about, okay, what can we talk about? When can we talk about it? And at the same time, try to keep in perspective the larger picture of, how does that piece fit into, the larger issue?
I've got a question. This diagram shows a whole variety of projects. And right now, to me, this looks really squishy. I don't know what any of these are in detail. Is there a programmatic document that lays out what's going on, what are the pieces, how they all fit together, performance requirements?
Yeah, it's a containment system evaluation.
That's the programmatic document for the entire site?
It has similar purposes, yes.
Oh, well, we're trying to talk about discussing all these pieces in a vacuum.
Right.
We have no way of knowing how they fit together, what the performance requirements are, and that depends on how they fit together, how they will be used, what the long-range planning is. If it's all going to be in this containment document, that's great. That'll be a really major step forward to have something that actually organizes this site into a program. Because right now, I see no program. I see a lot of pieces that are ad hoc and just sort of going off on their own with very little relationship to each other.
I see Lee's hand up, and I also don't want to, I want to wrap up the former conversation just to wrap it up and know where we stand before we get, this is related, I understand. It's also part of understanding the big picture.
Yeah, containment system evaluation may be the center of the universe, but it's not everything. And so to answer your question, Bill, I think, I don't know if anybody's willing to provide it, but there is this giant master schedule that puts all these parts and pieces and more into context. And I'll just say, I don't know why you can't see that, but to this day, I still don't necessarily agree with the order here. I think the conceptual site model should be the very first thing. And it's kind of pushed to the end, but that's another item that we just continue to disagree with EPA on. We continue to discuss those things,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but honestly, there is this giant master schedule, and if you have the stomach for it, I would suggest maybe that's something that the EPA and the work cell defendants should consider giving to the public. So it exists. I just want to say that. So
And I think Tim Shangris has come to these meetings and talked to.
it gets revised routinely.
He came like a year and a half ago.
Right. But that's just the planning. That's not something that, like, we were talking about putting it all together into one.
But it's critical path. That's what that schedule is about. What is dependent upon what? And like I said, the state doesn't necessarily agree with that critical path completely, but that's what EPA and the Works and Defense are doing. So,
well, right now, it just looks like a bunch of ad hoc independent pieces.
right. This is just a cartoon of the major schedule is what it is. So and that's right. The schedule was presented before.
Is that just quickly, is that something Steve Lynn did that could be made available to the TAG advisors? Do you know, or do you have to kind of consult?
There'll be a new version on October 1st. So.
Has there been publicly available previous versions?
Honestly, I'm
not aware.
Honestly, I don't file them because it's so fluid. I don't know that they're very concrete, but.
Well, maybe we could just say, unless you all have a sense of whether that could be shared, maybe that could be a follow-up for Bill and Dietrich, just to get back in touch, to see if that could be shared.
At a minimum, on October 1st, we're having a meeting. I will make a point of filing it, and then you can take a look at it. So I assume that's copacetic, so. No? Yes.
Tom has
It's not my decision.
Are you asking?
I am asking.
Yes.
I just wanted to, it's a dynamic system, project management schedule. It's just really to try to keep things on track. So it's not going to tie anything together.
I'm just asking, what's the driver behind all this? I've not seen a programmatic document that pulls everything together and explains how the
That's
pieces
just
fit
makes the
together.
containment system evaluation. And that's
Well,
what goes together, so.
I guess I take exception to the vagueness of your question, because when you say programmatic document, we have a consent decree. We have a record of decision. We have a 5-year review. We have lots of program documents, if you will. And all of those, I mean, at their essence, are designed to document a remedy that's protective of human health and the environment. What that translates into is what you see on this page. But if we share the master
This lists a whole bunch of pieces. The documents you mentioned don't go this far. They're very high-level documents. What I was asking for is the driver document that identifies these pieces and identifies what the scope and the performance requirements are.
Well, again,
I've been here for 5 years. We've got all these pieces now, and I have yet to see anything that explains any of them beforehand.
So Bill, point well taken. I think Steve, you're going to respond. And then we should move on.
Well, when you use the term drive, okay, in terms of creating a legally binding document that compels action. Consent decree, the record of decision, the 5-year review are those documents. What you're looking for is something that is not just the containment system evaluation, it's something more comprehensive. And, you know, the Gantt chart that we refer to is simply an enumeration of all of those things. It does provide some insight because there's time associated, time brackets associated with each of them. You know, we use the term critical path. Some of those things are interdependent, you know, one's got to be done before the other and so forth.
2 years ago, you had a 5-year review. It listed a bunch of recommendations. I might have expected to see a programmatic document that drove the resolution of those recommendations forward, that identified all the pieces that needed to be done, what their scope was, performance requirements, how they fit together. These are obviously the pieces, I think, that you have created to do that. But I don't know what the scope of them are. I don't know what the performance requirements are. I don't know how they fit together. And that's why I say right now it looks very ad hoc. We used to get plans to review that said, well, here's the next phase of the project and here's the plan for it. Haven't seen that in a couple of years. We have not seen any plans for anything. They're just happening, I guess.
There are EPA approved plans for synoptic sampling, cessation, north end, 1/4 dioxide.
Well, I'm looking at the bigger picture,
Dispute.
the 3D visualization, the groundwater modeling,
EPA.
the capture zone
Wait.
analysis.
Plans that lay out exactly what you're talking about.
We haven't seen plans for those things. Synoptic sampling, there was a sampling plan. Yeah.
So I think.
Cessation, it said we're gonna shut it down and do some sampling. Those are very low level, fairly simple things. What about the big ones?
Yeah, that's.
Well,
There's only one issue in
Planning
dispute,
stage, that's the
only one
plan.
issue.
The containment system evaluation plan does all these things.
So it
You're right,
seems,
they can be interrelated.
It better be.
Yeah, exactly. So.
so you think what Bill's talking about and looking for is in the containment system?
I can't guarantee all of it is in
But
there, but it does put the framework for the evaluation and pulls these pieces together to some extent.
So we're gonna see it after the fact.
After this.
So, After, yeah, what I'm saying, we never saw the plan. What we're gonna see is the result after the fact when it's
Not
pretty much done. So,
So, WSD, Sarah directed the WSD as to what she wanted in the containment system evaluation plan. They went back, wrote a draft based on that. And, then they came back and said, is this what you want? So under Sarah's direction, this plan was developed. Then it went through review. We had some comments that went back to them. So, and then it went to the state. They've had it.
it never went public.
No, because they went to the state, they had 6 weeks, and then they invoked the dispute. So that's where it stopped.
Yeah, okay, so I feel like that should move on. I also want to wrap up the formal conversation and want to move on and Richard, you have something.
I want 2 minutes. When we wrap this other thing.
Okay. Okay, I mean, it sounds to me like a lot of what Bill's looking for in terms of big picture is in this containment system capture zone evaluation plan. And it also would be important for Bill and Dietrich to have all the work plans, which I assume you do.
Yes.
Okay. And so will you all make sure that you have all the work plans that are out there that you need? In the meantime, just on this, on the question of the engagement of the tag advisors, I mean, I think that where we stand right now is that it sounds like Dietrich, you have direct ad hoc technical discussions with Sarah as needed. You're gonna put together, I think, some proposed dates and agenda topics for an upcoming meeting. It sounds like there's a question about whether you wait until these upcoming reports are done, drafts are out, or you don't, and you just rely on the access files that you will get access to soon and talk about data. And that sounds like it's actually in your court, Dietrich and Bill. And that the question, the underlying question remains of will there be a way to have some sort of more regularized process for the CAG and the TAG advisors to be involved in looking at data and interpreting data, coming up with ideas, batting around, vetting solutions at the table on the front end with the agencies that works, and ideally the work settling defendants too at some point. And I assume that that's been heard, that desire has been heard, and that's something that will be, we'll put it in the notes. It's a loud and clear request. And I think right now is a difficult time because of the dispute resolution process, but it's come up repeatedly, and I'm just gonna emphasize it. Yeah.
Just to follow on with that, in the 2 years or 2.5 years, whatever it is that we've been doing CAG, we've had these same requests over and over and over and over again. And we haven't gotten anywhere. And now it just seems like it's convenient that the health department has a dispute. What happened for the last 2 to 2.5 years before this dispute? And nobody has to answer that question. It's just a statement. It's really disturbing.
Yeah.
We've been making our argument for the last 2 years. And until we got the documents, we couldn't go into formal dispute. So, and the only other thing I'll say, and I wouldn't say take it to the bank, but my senior management has a sense of urgency over this issue. They want this resolved. They want it resolved soon, and they want it resolved correctly. So, I can't put a timetable on it, but
well, it sounds like it's a priority, and it's also big. Okay, so that's a lot. We're still, on the top part of the agenda. I assume we're just this I think is valuable if hard discussions. That's the point, I think, of these meetings in many ways. Richard wanted 2 minutes, and then we're gonna talk about the tour that happened today real quick.
Okay, basically, as a layperson, it seems to me that from my perspective, and even some CAG members, health department, our technical advisors, we don't agree with the method that y'all are doing to delineate the plume. I want to see our technical advisors directly involved with designing a proper delineation method for the plume. And I know I'm not saying this right, but y'all looking at the plume chasing methods that are implied down at the Trinidad investigation method, which is totally different than the way it's been done here. And so that was my issue about what should be done, because that issue affects the development of residents in the plume area, the residents that live there, city of Aurora. That issue does. And it's not being, to me, it's not being resolved, and our technical advisors are not being brought in to give their opinion and their side of how it should be done.
Thanks. And Sarah will be here at the next meeting. So.
All right. Yeah. Sarah doesn't bother me. No, I don't care about Sarah. I care about the fact that we've got technical advisors.
Our hydrologist.
So you're saying, I think what you're saying is that if Sarah doesn't want to do this and doesn't want to do this, it's not going to be done. The involvement and having our technical advisors bring in a methodology that they believe is the correct way to do it, and it's the standard way to do it. I think others have chased plumes in that kind of a method.
Richard, I assume that, it's on, what you just brought up is on point with what we just discussed, I assume.
Yeah, it's part of it, but to me,
yeah.
that should rise to the top. That's something we always need to know and get taken care of. have it delineated the proper way, so that we know what's what.
We work in a review capacity. We need a plan. We can review the plan, we can make comments, we can ask questions. We can intuit whether it's going to accomplish the performance requirements. You know, it's not for us to run your program. It's just for us to review it and be able to advise our client that it is sufficient and to do the job and give the answers, and that it was then done to meet those performance requirements. That's all we're after. A plan that we can review, look at, comment on, and then we have something to review when we get the result at the end, not being told, well, here's the result. The plan for what we did is in the result.
Yeah, I think that point has been made strongly, and I hope, yeah, Lee wants to add some.
This lower left polygon, the green one, this goes by several names, but here it's called the North End 1,4-dioxane plume characterization. We typically call it the North End investigation. That's the document EPA has right now that they're reviewing. So that is the focus of your applause or criticism. And I can't get it to you any faster than I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
But that is it. That's, and whether that's
I was
complete.
just trying to paraphrase for.
Right, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm saying what I was trying to say.
Our job is to review.
Yeah.
We have to have something to review.
Yep.
We have to have something to comment on and use to advise our clients.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we were going to hear just an update about the tour that happened today with the city board, and I think there were some Arapahoe County officials there as well. All right. Do you anyone want to say a couple words? Just what this was?
Yeah, I don't have the list of all the attendees. Do you have it, Judy?
Yeah, it's listed, and there's a couple more there.
Diane Kosis went for the county, but she's not here this
So did Michelle Halsted.
Yeah.
And the county president.
So Steve, you just want me to say who was there? Yep. So we had two people from the Aurora City Council. We had Mayor Gare, Council members Richardson, Councilmember Persons, Councilmember Murillo. We had two staff people from Arapahoe County that you heard, Diane and Michelle Halsted.
When I say what they do, Diane Kosis is our energy.
One of the guys.
Yeah, she comes to this quite often.
She's a geologist.
She's a geologist. Her previous title was oil and gas specialist, but now she's doing solar plants as well. And so that's it. The other person is an administrative, Michelle Halsted, who is directly in the Board of County Commissioners office. She was hired at the first of the year, has been, she's in charge of admin and communications. And so because she knows I come to these meetings and it's on the minds of all the county commissioners, she went on a tour to just familiarize herself with the site. Sorry.
No, that's great. And for some folks, it was the first time they'd been out there. For others, it was just a review. I think like Charlie Richardson was the city attorney forever, for as long as I've been alive, so he knows. So it was a refresh for people like him and Marcia. But it was a good event, a couple hours, and then we came here right after.
We didn't get into any issues. It was more of a very high level intro to Lowry. Here's where the site is. These are the remedy features. Let's get invested and take a look.
Anyone have any questions, comments?
Was it similar to the tour that?
Same.
Oh, perfect. Then I know exactly how they did it, because I did it last year.
Yeah. Same thing.
Okay. Okay, so I'm moving to the work session.
Wait a minute, I do have some questions.
Okay.
Like some of the Aurora City Council members and Mayor Laguerre, what kinds of questions did they have?
They didn't really have a lot.
Did they understand what was being presented?
Yes, they did. They sure did.
What was
By the
presented?
time we left, I mean, we showed them what the site was, where things were at, how we did the testing, showed them water treatment. They didn't have a lot of questions, and we gave them our information if they had anything they wanted to follow up with.
Did you have a handout?
They have our maps.
Did they have the 2016 data or the more recent data?
You want to talk about?
You can have my copy.
Here's what they have.
A map, of the thing, of the whole thing, where the testing wells are, and just a map that shows what Lowry is and what Dad's is.
Pretty benign.
Very high level.
It's a waste of time, in my opinion.
They enjoyed it. They really appreciated being out there.
I'm sure they enjoyed it.
You're sitting here just because of-
Anyone else have any?
No exposure pathways equal no risk. Could you explain that, please?
No, I couldn't. That's actually from a slideshow. From
That's from the
Dr. Berry.
Jason Crow.
So I think this might actually lead us into the next topic, Marky, and let me ask you, but just because I think those are the exact concerns that were raised at the last meeting regarding the last tour, and I think the next topic is the CAG's response to that, which probably applies to the same comment. Should we just segue into that?
Sure.
Okay. So do you all want to explain what this is about? Because at the last meeting, we talked about the tour, there was information shared that had been presented, and the CAG members have concerns about it, and so you all said we want to follow up on this, and this is, do you want to talk about your follow-up?
Yeah, we can talk about the follow-up. It's our opinion that the presentation that was given was misleading. We have had problems for years with some of the websites putting out to the public that there's no exposure because nobody's drinking the water. And we've been commenting on that for years. And so when we have a map and a presentation that goes out to our Congress people that says a number of things that just aren't accurate in our opinion, we decided that we needed to respond. And when I spoke with the congressional representatives, I told them that we felt that this presentation was misleading. There were some issues in here that we had real objections to because until tests are done, we're never going to know if anybody's drinking this water or who's being exposed in this water because there's not been any real studies done to give us the facts on that. And Clean, the other tag group we had for a while, we had people that we had a list of 50-foot wells, 60-foot wells that people were actually using for domestic use, and we asked that the water be tested, and it never came about. And so here we are now, we're a new tag, and we're asking for the same thing. Let's please not say nobody's being exposed because nobody's drinking the water. That was the biggest upset. The next upset is where it says on one of these that it's not a pump and treat. Well, we don't get that. It is a pump and treat. That's exactly what we're doing out there. That's what the water treatment plant is for. So we wanted to know from the congressional reps that were on the tour, did they want to meet with us? How could we give our side? They said, that's such a complex site. If you could just make it a little easier. If you could just give this to us, just bullets. So we put together our map. We put bullets. And we asked Dietrich and Bill to help us. And if anybody needs a copy, I have some copies here.
And this is what you sent out by email a few days ago, right?
This is the same as what we sent out by email.
Okay.
And so that we weren't acting like we were going behind people's back and saying things that, we weren't willing to back up, I sent it to everybody. And I sent it to the congressional people that went to the tour. And I have to say, we did get a response back. Thank you very much. It's really, kind of like, I felt like I was in college again, and this was my essay, and the professor just went and was grading me. And I said, how much more perfect could that be? But we went to Dietrich and Bill because we wanted to be sure that we weren't saying things, that would cause people angst. But it's the truth. It's documentation, or it's something we really want investigated. And so the response back has been very, very favorable. I'm glad we did it. Would anybody else like to add in anything?
Well, to me, we talk about this, and there's some very valid questions and statements on there. And then you say, well, we take them on a tour, but they don't ask any questions. That to me just does not make sense. And these valid questions, valid concerns, and they're all laid out. Oh yeah, we took them on a tour. It was beautiful. It was nobody asked any questions. Well, I don't know what that means. I wasn't on the tour. I don't know what that means. It's just, it's like a lot of things that go on here.
Yeah.
They paint a picture and it's like,
The thing that I took away from the map was that I thought it was actually a really useful way to capture the kinds of questions that have been coming up at the CAG. I don't think, we're not talking about capturing the God's truth, we're capturing concerns.
Yeah.
So I thought it was I think the more that we can, there are a lot of questions that come up that are swirling around and distilling them down to key questions like this, I think is really useful just in terms of, okay, let's see if we can answer these or address them over time. So anyway, not commenting on, substance, but I think the idea of this is probably useful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has got to be made clear is that we didn't do this for any other reason except to start a dialogue. And like John said, when we had a work study session so we could discuss, is this what we want to put out? John said, what's really discouraging about this is we've been asking most of these questions for 5 years. And we've gone no place with them. These are concerns we've had. People like me have had these concerns for probably 25, 30 years. And we're still not looking to make sure nobody is really being exposed. And most of this thing that's really discouraging to me personally after having worked with Margie and the people in River Creek, most of the reasons that it's what I call obfuscation is people want to develop that land. So by golly, we're not going to talk about what may be there, what may threaten future homeowners and families. And to me, that is just discouraging and disgusting. And that's why we keep asking these questions over and over again. So we put this out as an opening to have a discussion.
Okay.
I think you really put the nail on the head when you said, as far as getting a document together, just that expresses my client's concerns. And this was not to be involved. The map is in the presentation. It was a useful document for me to help them get their thoughts together, to kind of express the concerns about what was being presented, but really to get the best idea forward. And I think you really, an opening to a discussion is probably one of the best ways to describe this. To get it all on one, as simple a format as possible, and present the basic concerns. This wasn't prepared. This was prepared for the group to meet that objective. It wasn't. I think there's concerns about what's being presented publicly on the site, and that's important because it identifies what other people may think is going on or where we have disagreements with what's going on. I'm really happy to hear the community involvement planning process is being done. It gives an opportunity to kind of formalize some of that. But I think at the end of the day, when we're sending in comments about documents, when we're asking technical questions or I'm talking to Sarah, if y'all guys have seen this, you'll understand kind of where we're coming from a lot better.
Karen, can I ask you, do you know if anybody else from the city of Aurora went on the tour?
This is the first time hearing about it.
Oh, okay.
I'm learning a lot. Who was there? And we did talk about the last CAD meeting, its potential tour. So it was in the meeting notes. But who went? I wouldn't know who went. Right. Yeah, we didn't really, I guess you guys didn't really know until.
You could tell me who was invited, but I won't know.
It was just the elected.
Right, and I know that everybody probably saw that Nicole Johnston was out of town and not able to attend, and so I learned that along with all of you. So
Just sent an email saying she's in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
This was an EPA tour, right?
No, it was
Sponsored
put
tour?
together by the work selling
Okay,
defendants.
so the work selling defendants sponsored tours.
Right.
But the council didn't ask EPA to see about the site. They asked the work selling defendants.
I don't know how that came into it.
What concerns me is that the 5-year review protectiveness of the site is undetermined. Right?
Say that again. I
The
didn't.
5-year review said the protectiveness of the site was undetermined. They did not say it was protected. They could not say it was protected for a short period of time, like 2 to 5 years. They could not say that it was not protected. So the next one between not protected and partially protected for 2 to 5 years was it's undetermined whether the site is protected. That basically, the whole purpose of the site was to contain the contaminants. But they don't know if that's happening. And yet, the work selling defendants tell people no exposure pathways equal no risk. An
So
exposure
that's,
pathway did exist. Trace levels of 1,4-dioxane and plume do not pose an exposure risk to individuals living nearby. That's saying it's protected, and that's a lie.
that's a good point. So that maybe the remedy is protected.
It is protected, you're saying it is?
Well, typically when we do 5-year reviews, our driving factor, if a remedy is protected or not, is if there's any risk to human health or the environment. When there's no exposure pathways that are connecting with a person or an animal, then there's no risk, right? That's what that means, right? You're not interacting with it, no risk. If you are interacting with it, at what level? So is it below an acceptable standard or is it above? So then that's the next level. So that slide that you just read was put together by the EPA toxicologist who was here at our last meeting, David Berry. And he looked at the site and based on those different items, dermal, inhalation, ingestion, we have no evidence that there are any exposure pathways of a level that would present an unacceptable risk to people. So in that case, 95% of the time, your 5-year review would say it's protected. This 5-year review for 2 of the operable units, the shallow groundwater and the deep groundwater, there were questions as to the vertical depth and what was the other one? To the extent, there were some wells that were in the plume that's drawn on the map that you have. There were abandoned wells, and then there's the 2 private wells. So they wanted to make sure that those abandoned wells weren't being used, and that the private wells did not have an unacceptable level of 1,4-dioxane. So that testing's been done on the private wells along Jewel. Nothing was found there. And then the abandoned wells have been inspected and documented that they are not being used. So those were the 2 issues in the 5-year review that deferred the protectiveness. So that's, the onus is on the EPA now to investigate those and close out those issues. So that's what the north end, putting in the new nested wells and getting the data, which right now indicates not detect, it indicates that there probably isn't an exposure pathway from that. We'll get the final report and then we'll look at it from a 5-year review point of view to try to undefer the protectiveness and come up with a determination. I know that's a long answer to your question, but that slide there is the EPA slide
So
from
that's
Jason
the
Crowe.
exact reason why I'm talking with that, because you've got well that have gone up over 200%. in one Fort Knox. You've got 12 or 11 wells that around the north end boundary wall. Some of them, or many of them, beyond the north end boundary wall, where the one Fort Knox thing is going on. One Fort Knox thing is just mirroring in the line and just tell you what else can come out from all the other contaminants can come out. You have no explanation as to what the pathway is for them to go up beyond the wall. Are they going underneath? Are they coming from the far east side? You haven't tested for that, as far as I know. And so you haven't been able to determine if there's a pathway. You've got indications there's a pathway somewhere because those things are going on after you quit injecting water and diluting.
Right, so when you stop injecting water, so the water, let's just say it's diluting the concentrations of the 1,4-dioxane in that well. So when you stop injecting it, you get less water in the well, the concentration of the 1,4-dioxane is gonna increase.
That's not scientifically correct, is it? I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna get involved in it.
There's some reasons why along the north boundary barrier wall,
I think you should get your hydrogeologist to come in and explain this. And I think you should put something on paper that you will stand behind publicly, instead of just making claims and talking, but you don't have the documentation to back up.
I think Dietrich is.
There are huge data that you have not answered, not filled for years. You're making claims that the information doesn't exist to dispute what you're claiming. But you have these huge data gaps that you've never filled. And you have no plan, apparently, to fill those data gaps. And you have no public document that backs up any of this.
Bill, can I go to Dietrich?
I'll shut up.
He's been.
I think this is, I don't want to get, as far as the risk discussion, and you have a completed pathway, that entire discussion is premature until you know where the plume is. I can understand the frustration because we've been looking at dotted lines and estimates for a long time. But I would not, as an environmental professional, I would not make any statements as to whether the risk exists or not until I knew where the plume was, particularly in an area where we know we've got down gradient groundwater users. I mean, I don't want to throw bombs and say everybody's getting poisoned. We don't know that either. But if you don't know where the plume is, you don't know what the risk is. And you don't know where the plume is. Bottom line.
I mean, I think this conversation and what you just said kind of encapsulates what we've been talking about at this CAT, right? For
3 years.
Right. And so I mean, I don't think we can go further. We don't have the data. We're not sitting down with it, but I think it's actually very well said, Dietrich, in terms of what the concerns have been that have been heard. And I think Linda and Cap, this is where EPA is coming from. And it's just, this is where we are.
This isn't where we are. Dr. Berry, EPA, has made a decision that it is protective and it's printed and it's been given to the public. So I think we're done. We don't have to go any farther, right? Because he's made this determination.
I think you're taking the slide out of context. I understand
I know,
your
but that's
concern
what they
about
read.
it being shared and the context being understood. But for Dr. Berry, as a toxicologist, to say if you do not have a complete exposure pathway, you will not have, you have no risk, is a true statement.
Right.
Now, it matters how that is being applied, what the context is for the conversation. So I understand, your concern, but I don't think we need to seize upon that a few words on the slide that were shared in a different context and say, that it's inherently wrong because the statement itself is true, but it's how it's applied and how you extend it.
And nobody in the public knows how to do that.
Right.
And so they read the words And that's what they,
That's gospel.
that's what they believe.
Yeah, you've gone to a council and
Yes.
then you've said, basically you've implied that you can go ahead and build your homes right north of Yale now because everything's okay, there's no pathway. That's the implication that they come out
That's
of
what they
it,
do.
so they go home happy and they vote for building the homes.
Well, if EPA thought we had all the information we needed, that we were at the end of the discussion, that we could form a hard and final conclusion, we wouldn't be engaged in all of the work that we're doing with the WSBs, with the state, in doing all this review. With regard to characterizing the plume, yes, we understand that. We understand dotted lines and the difference between inferred plume delineation and documented, empirical evidence. We understand
They
that.
don't clarify that.
Pardon me?
This presentation, these maps do not clarify that to the people you're giving this to. They
Well-
think that whole, in fact, when Congressman Crowe was looking at the maps, he says, well, what does this mean? And I said, well, the dots mean they haven't identified it there. They don't know. He said, you're kidding me. And he went back and, those are the kinds of things the public asks. And so what we're saying to you, I understand what you're saying. As a scientist, this is the way you explain things, but it doesn't mean that's what should be presented to people who are not in your realm.
Because I want us to move on, I want to sort of summarize this because again, it relates to a theme that's been discussed a lot on the CAG and Chris. I think it's related to community engagement with respect to the site is that, there are a lot of smart scientific people working on the site, especially from the agent's perspective. And I think what I have heard several times is terms like non-detect, terms like, I can't remember, there's a number of them. They're terms of art, they have a specific scientific meaning, they're used probably, accurately when they're used, but they convey something different to lay people and that this seems to me a continuation of that concern. And so honestly, what I would like to do if we can is to, I think it's been underscored, it was underscored at the last meeting, communication around the site and around it is tricky because there's some things like Steve is saying that could be technically accurate, but they could be interpreted to mean a different thing, and that's what you all are talking about. So I think it's something to think about. I think it's come out in the tours in terms of the reaction, and it just.
You're right on the button, and I appreciate you breaking it down, and I'm fine if this is as far as it goes because I think we've made our point. But I would just like to say that the most difficult part of all of this, and when this kind of a tour is done and the public is out there watching this go on, this is really hard for us because we don't have the open doors to us that industry and legislators and those of importance out there have. We have to fight every inch of the way to get our information out. We're up against agencies even saying things that we don't agree with. And so it's very hard, and I just want to say we've been fighting this battle a long time. What we're asking for is if we can't back up what we say logically, then don't pass out the information to the public. That's all we're trying to say, and we're going to try and do the same thing. But this is very upsetting, and we are very upset by Dr. Berry. He was very, very forceful with me after the last meeting. He said, I know, I can tell you exactly what's in that plan. And it really upset me. And so whenever that is brought up, I need EPA to understand that's not going to make me more cooperative.
You want to know what's in the plan? I
So-
mean, he was trying to explain to you what's in the plan.
I know what he was saying to me. He said, I can tell you right now what's in that plan. And I don't believe anybody can do that because you have not really come up with any definitive way to say where it is, how deep it is, and exactly what's in it. And the only thing WSDs want to talk about is 1,4-dioxane. And there's other things out there, and we'd like to have a better view of it all in an honest way, and that's what Dick is talking about.
That's what Dr. Beer is trying to convey to you, because he talked to me.
He said he can already tell me what's in that
Right,
plume.
he said, he talked to me after the meeting in the office, and said he'd like to go chemical by chemical through and
Good,
just go line by line, he'd like to come to
good.
the
Let our
CAG meeting
technical
and do that.
advisors help participate with him.
Yeah,
Please.
He would
That
like
would
to
be
come to the CAG
wonderful.
meeting, do that. He
Dietrich, are you ready for
specifically told me.
this? Is this a good thing?
You know, happy to talk to you, but at the end of the day, why are we doing risk assessment when the characterization is not done yet? To me, that seems premature. And, you know, I work with risk assessment all the time. And one of the things you have to be very careful with is they're very dependent on the environmental scientists and the hydrologists and the engineers to discuss how complete data sets are, what the data gaps are, and what the uncertainty is. I kind of feel for the risk assessor that sits down and gets told it's all done, does their document only to find out that there was significant data gaps. So I think that I think this conversation needs to be tempered. I also think that it's really, I think it's a symptom of a bigger problem in that this whole plume is so large. This problem is such a huge site component. It's almost like its own OU. The programmatic document that I think that we're frustrated not seeing is where we would see an RI for this. You know, something that does kind of pull it all together. And the bit-by-bit analysis has led to a lot of this uncertainty. And a lot of these discussions, you know, I think that we're having right now. And I think that's going to be a discussion going forward. It's a technical discussion I'd love to have. Are the 3 sampling programs adequate to produce the 5 documents that are proposed? Are there data gaps exist? I mean, these are the discussions we need to have. Risk assessment is not the discussion, I mean, I think to have right now until we have, you know, the actual plume characterized. It just seems premature.
I guess I had one more just request really quickly. Do I use that slide? Can I use that slide in the backup for our land use cases in that area? Is that something that I would provide to my council members? That be accurate for whether they should, because, you know, we've been asking for something that would, that we could use to support a development application in those areas? Can I use that slide?
So, yeah.
So if
Which slide
the
are you
one
talking
that,
about?
you were
The
pointing
risk
out, it
line.
says there's no
The risk
risk, would I
Yeah.
put that in my development application as a conclusion from EPA? We met and I was trying to get something from EPA that said whether there was a problem out there and you were not
Oh.
able to provide me with that
So,
information.
I mean, that's specific to the 1,4-dioxane plume. As far as Lennar, I mean, yeah, you could use it in relation to the 1,4-dioxane plume.
Okay,
Do you have a
and that
copy?
slide, does that slide say it's for 1,4-dioxane?
No,
The
it doesn't.
second bullet.
Okay.
I can send you a copy of the presentation.
I have the paper, I just wondered when and our public comes to speak about a development application and council's listening to their, you know, their concerns. And I haven't had anything but the 5-year review.
Right.
If this is something that I can put in to support that there's not an environmental issue, then I'd like to be able to do that.
Okay.
As long as it's accurate.
So I'll go back to the office and clear with my legal staff and make sure that they're comfortable with it, and then
Yeah, send me an email that says how I can use that. And I'm way okay with having everybody on the CAG CC'd on that.
I think Lee Pavanka has his hand up.
I can't believe what's happening here. Are we saying that's a protectiveness determination? Because what I was hearing earlier, this is just a hypothetical statement that was provided at the tour, but now you can use it as.
And if I have something from EPA in writing to that effect, then.
Yeah, let me ask them to stop.
So
Okay,
then,
I'm gonna
so that's the end of the 5-year review then?
I'm gonna
Because you said it's
I'm gonna make a
protected.
note about this, and we have 5 minutes left, but what I'm gonna say is that Linda is gonna go back, look at that side of the legal stuff, get back to Karen on whether it can be used in support of land use applications, and if so, how. And we will come back to whatever, you know, we'll hear back.
I do want to say one more thing about exposure pathways and whatnot. in Murphy Creek, just within the last couple of months, we've had some raccoons show up in the middle of the day, out by the pool, walking on their hind legs, sitting on fire hydrants, and dropping them dead in front of people. So our security folks, our
On their
security,
hind legs.
yes,
Yes.
our security folks have said they do not witness this sort of strange behavior south of that landfill. They've never seen that. But north of the landfill in Murphy Creek, the animals are odd. So Maggie's always had a question about the cows that graze out on that field.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. And so maybe we need to start looking a little bit farther and a little bit closer and look at some more things other than what has been looked at for the last 20 years. And really take a peek at what is going on, because that is not normal behavior.
Margie, this is in Murphy Creek. I'm just making a note of this here. Raccoons, okay.
Ma'am, can I throw out that if you see that and find dead raccoons, if you call Tri-County Health Department, because what you're describing sounds like it could very well be rabies to me. We have endemic rabies all over. But we would like to test those animals if we're made aware.
We've asked them to not
Let
just,
us know the
yeah,
next time.
let us know the next time.
Okay, Tri-County Health. Okay, folks, we're just gonna have to defer the rest of the agenda items, but I mean, I think that this is sort of what we talked about doing at this meeting. When we don't have data to discuss, we discuss
Okay.
what we've discussed.
Real quick, can we find out if they're gonna test the Arapahoe wells on site?
I doubt that's real quick. Is that real quick? Is there a quick answer for that?
We're talking about.
Is
I
there,
won't like the answer, but there is a very quick answer.
there is an answer and it won't be.
I said there is a very quick answer. You won't like it. But we will test the well in accordance with state regulations.
So for nitrates and bacteria.
The industrial
but
well,
not
replacing an
COCs,
existing industrial well that failed.
Not for one product,
We test it in accordance with state regulations.
Not for any contaminants
From the
outside of that. Is that what you're saying?
And I think we test it in accordance with state regulations.
Okay, just like when I test my well, the state will test for nitrates,
This is not a drinking
bacteria.
water well.
Right, so that's what you.
It's an industrial well.
I understand that.
Okay, so I think that's a short answer.
Yeah.
That
thank you.
we can, if we have a long discussion, we need for a longer discussion, we'll find the next agenda. Here's my question. The next normally scheduled meeting is the 17th of October. Sounds like Sarah can be here. We don't know if the reports are gonna be available, do we? Those two reports? Do we know that they won't? The cessation and the North End investigation?
Well, they're gonna have the data, hopefully.
Right. So the reports probably won't be ready, but the data is obviously being. Okay, so it seems like we can at least discuss the data from that are,
Yeah, we can talk about how the term was delineated, the methodology.
okay, that sounds good. I feel like we've talked about that, but
Oh, that's what you're referring to.
I know.
It's just a word, which is normal.
Okay, so, I will be in touch, but it sounds like, with folks, but it sounds like for now, we have on the agenda, we're gonna talk about the data that are going to these two upcoming reports. Hopefully Dietrich and Bill will have access to those any day, and same with the state.
You want to ask about moving up
So
November?
I would like to ask Dietrich to, please keep you in the loop.
Yeah.
About, putting that schedule together, Dietrich.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Keep Ryan in your loop.
Keep me in the loop. And in terms of November and December, Linda asked that we look at that schedule real quick. Do people have any, so the normal CAG meeting in November would be the week before Thanksgiving? Is that a problem for anybody? Is that what you wanted?
We did a combined early December one last year because of the holidays, and I wondered if people would be interested in doing that, because that's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I think so. I would be for that.
Yeah, like maybe the
Okay.
first week of December or something.
Okay, is everyone open to that? And we'll schedule at the next meeting, a combined, because of the holidays, instead of November, December, do an early first week of December-ish, and we'll schedule that the next meeting. But if EPA staff in particular can look at your calendars and know who's available when, in early December, that'd be good. At the next meeting. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Thanks for skedaddling before they kick us out.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Janine, for getting me.
Thanks, Dietrich.
Hi, Dietrich.
That's the thing.